All right. Good afternoon, Dr. Stagg. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is one of those excuse me, podcasts I'll preface the audience with. I am geeking out and I'm so excited for this conversation. So everybody just, hang on because this is gonna be fun. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yes.
Very, very, very excited. All right, so we're just gonna start at the beginning. Because for me, one of the things that from being on your website alone, that makes your practice so uniquely different. And I'll put a link to it in our show notes so that people can go and experience it themselves. But you take this balanced approach to treatment where it's oral health and overall well-being. So I'd love to just start there. How did you come up with this path of care? How did you get here?
All right. It was a journey. It was a journey, and there's so many different facets. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the flower.
Oh, yes.
The flower for the
I have
logo.
questions about that. Yeah.
So this is the book. This is the book that you were asking me about, my book that's out, and it's called Smile, It's All Connected, Whole Health Through Balance. So originally what happened is I studied abroad in France. So I'm already outside the box compared to the typical American training, right? We're more open to natural care, holistic care, homeopathy, alternative care, herbs, you name it. And then I married an American and came to America and had to do everything over again. So I did a lot of CEUs following the standard American protocols, and they were more so in mechanical aspects. All right. I did all the big hot shots here in Florida because we have a few of them.
Right.
My biggest question was, why aren't the patients getting better? And so I'm a why person. I want to know why. There's a root cause to everything. And so, yes, you could be addressing one thing, but there's something else, and then there's something else, and there's something else, and nobody seemed to connect the dots. And so what happened is I started with a structural aspect. My child fell and hit her chin. And well, if you don't, all parents out there, if you usually have a fall on your chin, you'll end up usually 100% of the times a joint disorder. And the joint is innervated by the fifth cranial nerve, which is the biggest cranial nerve, which has, and in the book, there's so many diagrams, but it anastomoses, or it tethers in with 5 or 6 other cranial nerves that can go all the way down to your intestines. So to say that everything starts in the mouth is not absolutely incorrect. It's actually more correct than incorrect. And if you think about it, the gut is the second brain, right? Okay. So what happened?
I love that.
Right. So what happened, the flower, the dark night of the soul, if you will, there's going to be 2 parts to it. There's the top, if you will, that's in the light. And within the light, we have the shadow self. And in the dark, in the shadow self, we have the light. So we're always transmuting, we're always changing, hence the spiritual part, which you asked me earlier on, how come and why? But there's always balance. And so I literally, a lot of this was, I'm going to use the word channeled. It was downloaded. I prayed about this. I was praying about it. But this book started my entire life. But I literally handed the first set of papers to an editor, the first editor of many, in 2014. And we're now in 2024.
Oh, wow.
So this has been a journey and thousands of hours put into it. But what happens is, if you realize the balance, we always seek balance, homeostasis. We always want to be in balance. And in dentistry, if you're not level, another play on the word balance, you won't be, okay, my thesis, I'm going to give you a little side plot here. My thesis was how to change the bite will change the direction you walk in.
Oh.
All right. And so what happened is, in order to prove that changing the bite will affect the way you walk, I had to eliminate everything that could affect the way you walk, all the way from the eyes, the ears, the bite, the neck, the hearing, everything, the neck, the shoulders, the hips, everything. And so basically that's what shows is that when we have levelness here, the whole spine changes. So anyhow, I mean, that's a really roundabout way to many of answering of many questions, but I don't know if I got more confufflement than help.
No, you didn't. And I
All
love
right,
that
so
word. I'm going to use that.
hence the flower with a wave for balance, but emotion, and that's where you have the book has there's 6 petals on the flower. I start off the book with structural. All right, so that shows you how it's all connected structurally. Chemically, then we talk with mechanical, functional, emotional, and spiritual. And so I think the water there with the balance shows the emotional part. And you know, as a parent, that everything is tied in. You know when your child's not well, you know when something's not right, but as a parent, you want to know why. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to tie in the whys of all the reasons that these things do occur. Now, I know that you work a lot with Airway.
Yes.
So what the book also does is that in each connection, again, let's say structural, for example, in the structural connection, it's a very systematically well-written book. In each section, all right, you'll have every body part and how it's interconnected. So you'll have, for example, the teeth, you'll have the tongue and tongue space, you'll have the jaw joints, you'll have the airway, and you'll have the neck and the rest of the body.
Okay.
So it's very methodically written. And that's why I said earlier on, is that if you have questions, originally, remember I told you 2014, they wanted to go ahead and create, says that's too big. Nobody will read it. It's too heavy. But it's not, actually. You can lift it up. But what I'm trying to say is that everybody wanted to write 20 different books. You have to make one book on mechanical section. You have to make one on structural. But the thing, though, is that I talk about everything in one section, but I tie it back in the other section, which is tied back to this section, which
because
is
it's all connected. Right. So it wouldn't make sense.
Right. So that's why, too, there's a whole section on airway, but there's a whole section on airway discussed mechanically, structurally, functionally, anatomically, chemically, emotionally, spiritually, the breath of life, right? So again, it's all funnel it in, and then you have a human body who seeks balance all the time. And that's what the book does. It just funnels everything you could think of. And I want to share something with you that your audience might get, because you mentioned that this was for parents mostly, right?
That is mostly our audience, yes.
Every single editor, there were women who had children, and they told me that whilst they were editing, they would actually use the book as it was for a reference book for their kids whilst they were editing the book. And I said, yes,
that's what it's for. Yeah.
So that
and I will put a link, by the way, so the people on here, because if they're watching this, they've seen you pop the book up several times. Everybody else has no idea you're doing that. Yep, there it is again. Hello. And it's beautiful. And
thank you.
I'll put a link to it in our show notes. And now it's not officially available until May 7th, but you can pre-order it right now on Amazon.
Correct. Yep. Yes. Thank you so much for doing that. The goal. My goal. So as a mother, this book was written for all the questions that I never had the answers to. It's a compilation of all the questions over 42 plus years that patients had that never got answers to, and that they kept going around in circles because the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing, and they didn't get the help that they needed. So my goal, in effect, was to have all the answers for parents, the laypersons, to have readily available in simplistically understandable terminology, so that they could go ahead and have a reference. It's like an encyclopedia, but a reference. And actually, it's very heavily referenced. It is heavily scientifically referenced. I have nearly 360 plus, I think it's 356 references with science.
To be specific, yeah.
Okay, right. But it's not a woo-woo book. It's actually a scientifically written, layperson, easy to digest book. That is, if you and I are having this conversation, it's exactly as I
It's what the
talk to
book's
the
like.
patient in the book. I give them
Yep.
analogies, I give them explanations, and the goal was to make it so that people can understand how to take ownership of their bodies if they understand how they work.
Mm-hmm.
So that, guess what? The demand, you, me, will change, right? Because they'll be informed consumers, right?
Right.
Well, guess what happens when the demand changes?
Everything changes.
The supply will have to change,
Mm-hmm.
which means they'll bring the baby back with the bathwater that they got rid of last century.
Are you listening, Dios? You're coming back. Come on. It's happening. This is like my own side campaign. Bring back the Dios, please.
Right, right. So think about it. We used to be called dental physicians, right? Dr.
Which makes sense to me.
Right. And that's all this is in the book too, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a section, there's a part. So there's 3 parts. Part of the past, present, where I talk about what a health connections dental practice is like, how I work,
Mm-hmm.
and then the clinical aspect, if you will, and the admin aspect. So the clinical is explaining the flower sections, if you will, or the 6 of them, and then the future.
Okay.
So how it was. So to get back to the past, when we were dental physicians, all right, we dealt with the whole body. And Dr. Alfonda, just like you ever heard of Weston Price?
Yes, ma'am.
Like
I have.
Okay, just like maybe
and by
I'm
the
not
way,
sure.
I'll put a link to Dr. Becky's podcast in here, so people who haven't, they can listen to Dr. Becky explain it.
Perfect. And so Dr. Weston Price, actually, believe it or not, was a president of the American Dental Association way back when.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, it was all there before, Rebecca. It was all there.
Right.
We're just
And
bringing
we
it back now.
fixed it. Yeah.
We're bringing it back.
I
At least
love that.
that's what I would like to see.
Oh, I'm right there
I
with
want to
you.
empower moms to know that they have options and choices, and they're empowered in the knowledge that their child, it's not okay to have a headache. It's not okay to be snoring. It's not okay to breathe through their mouths. It's not okay to walk on their toes. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's okay, but it's not normal. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say. Every child's okay. Don't get me wrong. It's
just because it's common, it's not normal. This is not the way it's supposed to be.
Right. It's right. The new norm is not the normal norm.
Right.
And 2, what may be normal for one child may not be the other child's normal either.
Exactly.
Right.
And now I think parents, what are we, 20 minutes? And I think parents are going to start to understand why I'm geeking out at this podcast. I'm so excited for it. I love it. I love you. I'm just so excited. So, and one of the other things too, we talked a little bit before we got started, because we have an Airway Mama Bear army. And yes. I was like, Airway Mama Bears. And you said,
so this is because that's your wheelhouse, because that's what you do, that's your strength, and that's what you want. Right. My goal is to have the Mama Bear army, period. Well,
just the army.
Army kind of like maybe may have a negative connotation. I'd like to see that as a tidal wave. All right. So that's what I see, is that they're a movement. No armies. Let's just do this peacefully. Let's all get along, kind of thing. And this is the biggest thing, is that everybody needs to get on board.
Yes.
Everybody needs to get on board. Just like you said, bring back the DOs, bring back the chiropractors, bring back the speech pathologists, bring back the myologists, bring back the the osteopaths too, bring back the dietitians, bring back the nutritionists, bring back the physiatrists. So it's not a pill for every ill. There's a reason something's happening. Is what is the reason? How can we make it to where you understand that it's all connected in such a fashion that you could ameliorate what needs to be attuned and eliminate what is not necessary or detrimental to the child?
Right. Basically, it's time to take control of our health and the health of our children.
Correct.
It's time.
Biggest thing, and this is where the book is like so important, is prevention. I mean, a child, you start working on the health of your child 2 to 3 years before conception.
2 to 3 years before.
At least. The reason
Okay.
being is you want to make sure that you are ready, that you are healthy, that you've eliminated the toxins, that you are ready, what you need to do, that you're
Okay.
breathing right, that your husband has the right, correct sperm. Because, for example, I just read last night, I don't know where I read this, that taking aspartame reduces sperm quantity or quality in men. All right. And then the children that have, I don't quote me on this, but I read this and I don't know where I read it because I read this factoids and I was like, oh my God, that makes sense. But aspartame actually affects the quality of the men's sperm, and then the children have issues. Well, what does everybody drink? Diet this, diet that, right? So
Yep.
you want to start getting ready 2 to 3 years ahead of time, eating as healthy as you can, organically, avoid sugar. There's so many alternatives to sugar. All right. You want to be able to have something that will help you grow healthy babies. So you have healthy eggs, healthy babies, sperm, so to speak. And then you have a proper gestation period so that during pregnancy, you're also eating the right way. And one of the things that's super important is sleep. So we could talk about
Here we
sleep for the
go.
mother, right? Mother has
Yeah.
to have sleep. Mother has to have proper oral hygiene. All right.
Yes.
No abscesses. And I know it's a big contention, maybe about mercury. We can talk about mercury somewhere along the line. It's not a political statement, but I write it in my book. I said the gazillion question, dollar question is like, okay, the EPA doesn't want it in the water. The American Dental Association has us wearing filters. I've had mine for over 20 something years, but they just made it the law just a few years ago. Okay, but we're still putting it in the mouths, and why is that? So all these things are just food for thought. And I think
Yeah.
everybody needs to be an informed consumer and understand that they have choices. All right.
Yes.
And I think that's where the true meaning of my choice, my body, my choice is like, it's my body to make the right choices for me to be healthy, to go ahead and to have a healthy child, a healthy family, healthy choices, to know where to go from there.
Yep. And I will tell you, I will quote Tatiana on this. Choices, all about choices. That's it. It's all about choices. And we have the power to make those choices if we're informed. And that's is one thing that about these parents that I am just so over the moon about. They take the time, they do the research, but it's hard to find some of this stuff. And that's
Right,
why websites like yours, which I will put the link to,
right,
you have an outstanding resource section
right.
by topic. You can go look up mercury. You could go look up autism. You could, I mean, the way you've broken it down, it's really digestible for parents.
And that is the tip of the iceberg. I have nearly 1,000 to 2,000 other PDFs, and I'm going to
I'm
put
just not
them
there
in there
yet.
somewhere, because when I have thousands of articles. So to get back to why this thing too, I mean, I was on my journey and my daughter
Mm-hmm.
fell, etc. But what really cinched it was that I kept taking all these residencies, and I was telling you, I kept learning how much more I needed to know. We don't know how
Mm-hmm.
much we know until we don't. Let me rephrase it. We
Yes.
don't know how much we don't know until we know it, right?
Right.
And we're all perpetual students. Well, what
Should
happened
be.
after my fellowship, I went ahead and I got accepted at Tufts to do a master's program, and that's where I was telling you about how changing the bite changes the direction you walk in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened is I never thought I'd graduate. I couldn't find any data to corroborate what my thesis was all about.
Mm.
I found one German article, and that was like taking the pressure cuff, the pressure tip off the pressure cooker, so to speak. That also had 300 something references. And each reference that I would open had 30, 40 different references. Can you imagine the mother load?
Right.
So what happened is now I delve deep. And that's what this book is. I delve deep and deeper and deeper and deeper. It's like, okay, why? So how are you
Mm-hmm.
connected? So how is your eye, how are your eyes and your eyesight connected to the way you walk? Or how is it connected to the way you breathe? Or how is it connected to the way you hair and your neck, etc.? And that's where, good Lord, I mean, God created us all, like in the French say marionnette, or a puppet.
Right.
You can't separate one from the other. It's everything. And that's what the book was for. I know I'm rambling, but what I'm
No, you're
trying to
great.
say, it's a massive reference book. The biggest thing is that you have a resource, and do like me. As a mother, I looked and I found one. It's like, okay, open that reference and go look, and then you'll find 30 or 40 others. All right. On the
Yeah.
website, I have a ton, but there'll be more in the future too. So have them
Yeah.
keep looking. It's a totally new redesigned website specifically because we knew we were going to have massive traction with the book.
Mhm.
So we've been trying to prep for this so that people can have a resource, because originally this site was built as a community website for people. I have my dental practice. It has its own website,
Right.
but Dental Connections Unlimited or Health Connections Dentistry was built as a community resource for people to access data for their own information or informative processes.
Yeah. And my hope right now is every parent listening, and we've got all these mama bells out there going, that's the sound I hope is happening right now with everyone clicking to go to the website, because you can still listen to us while you do this. And you will discover that Dr. Stagg's not kidding. I have already spent a couple of hours in that rabbit hole, just looking and digging and finding. I'm nowhere near making it through just your resource section.
Right,
There is
right,
so much great information there.
right.
And to me, that's part of what this whole, we still call it an Airway community, but you're right, it's all connected. It's all about sharing resources and knowledge, because once you have it as a parent, and
Right.
even as a provider, as a parent, you can make the right decision, a more educated decision for your child. And as a provider, you can then change the course of your practice and how you're going to support your patients.
Right. I want to share a fun story with you. So
Please.
I have a local dentist who actually happened to find me through a myofunctional therapist. And
Okay.
he was blown away by what I shared with him. And I was like, okay, now this is a young man who's a dentist, right?
Right.
The dad
Okay.
doesn't know about this stuff.
Well,
Can
I'm
you
not
imagine?
surprised. They can't see my face. I'm not surprised because it's not taught. So I
No,
understand. Yeah.
right. So as a mom, I can understand how people can get pretty overwhelmed, despondent, desperate, especially if your child's not well.
Yeah.
But for an educated professional who, and this is where what happened to me, I got catatonic and I just sat there and cried and I said, how can I learn all this yesterday? And I
It's
just
what it
went,
feels like, isn't it? Yeah.
right. And that's where the thing too is that it's really hard because there's so much we realize we don't know. And that's where I hope the book will ease a lot of the anxiety, and the French term is angoisse. It's the angoisse. It's the stress of not knowing, of the anxiety, the stress of the anxiety, basically. It's like, you know what? Just read it through and read it a couple times, and then you'll go like, duh. There's so many duh moments in there. There's so many duh moments, and it's a lot of fun stories in there too, because it's life.
Right.
It's life. It's all the crap I went through, why I went through it, how I dealt with it, and how I help my patients go through their crap, their stories, and what we did to help them, to put it nicely, and help them figure out how to help themselves. And that's the biggest thing, I think, that as the mama bears, you have papa bears too, because we had a role reversal when my kids were younger. Dad stayed home and took care of them.
Nice.
So I was the one working. And that's where Captain IFBI, my other book, my children's book, came in.
Yep, we're gonna get to that one. Oh, I love that one too.
Hey, you want to show me? I'll show her the picture.
Oh, the posters behind you. I've already spotted that.
Okay.
I'm scoping everything.
Yeah.
I can see that one.
Yeah, he's back there. You see
He's
him?
there. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the other the children's book. And this one, the second tagline for this little guy is called Captain IFBI Story Time.
I personally like, there's nothing more unifying as a smile.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she did it. Yay.
Yeah. So one of the biggest times that I had, remember, I worked all day long. I was gone before they were up really. I came home, they were already, I was exhausted. I came home and then they were being fed or doing homework. And then the only time I had was story time. And that's what we
I love
did is I
that.
sat and I read with them. So actually,
Mm-hmm.
when I wrote this, it was like, okay, how can I tie in home care, oral hygiene, but make it to where it's not blah teeth, right? Not blah
Right.
brushing or flossing. No. What it is, you'll notice the captain is on a world, but there's
Mm-hmm.
children of every country, race, creed, religion, any and everything all over the world. And so each little section on the book is a different child, different culture, different sports, different cultural habits, different religions, different way of dressing. It tied in a lot of unity, a lot of love, and each page will either have a boy and a mother girl. You know what I mean? It was either a
Right.
male or female parent or a male or female child. There was no one thing. It was everything's different. And Captain was my character that I created that superpower man, superpower. So
Right.
IFBI stands for irrigate, floss, brush, irrigate.
Oh,
So basically it's a way of spending time with each child, holding them at night in your arms, letting them point to the pictures, and then talk about the country that you're talking about. What's that building? So for example, in France, you have the Eiffel Tower. Well, in Russia, you might have the beautiful, mosque, the big buildings. In Trinidad, where I'm from, all right, we invented Steelman, but we also have cricket. And you have the little Rasta colors, you have the Trini flag. I mean, there's so many little things in there. But it's just not a picture. It's like dive into it,
yeah.
dive into it, dive into it. And then there's lots of little things. And that's what I like to do. It's like I want you to think about thinking of understanding, because there's a process that you went down a rabbit hole. I'm talking mother to mother, parent to parent now.
Mm-hmm.
Your child didn't get the way they are now overnight.
No. Nope.
It's a drop plus a drop plus a drop plus a drop. So remember, we talked about getting ready for your pregnancy 2 to 3 years ahead of time, talking about 9 or 10 months or whatever lunar months of pregnancy. Then we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about everything at birth, right? So did you
Right.
nurse them? Are you able to nurse them? Do you have the proper tongue motion? Are the children breathing the right way? What are you eating whilst you're nursing them? You
Mm-hmm.
understand? So there's a
Right.
whole process. But if you understand how to think, then you could go back and reverse engineer the rabbit hole you went down. And that's what both books I do. I don't just want to garbage feed you information. No, I want you to think, because that's what I had to do. I had to look for the information. So I'm handing it to you on a platter with the understanding that now you need to cater to your child, because no child is a cookie cutter example
No.
as the other.
No. Same
And
with
that,
treatment. Every treatment, same treatment works for this child will not work for that child.
right. And that's very blatantly explained also. That's why I couldn't separate the parts in a make 16 books, because
Yeah. It's all
it's one
connected.
individual, whole health through balance. How do we balance everything hormonally? I mean, you name it,
Everything. And I have
nutritionally, everything.
I love that it empowers parents because that's educating and empowering parents. That's what we're here for.
Right,
You have to have that to achieve our personal mission.
right.
And it's the same mission for parents. So, and when we're talking about the 6 connections,
Yes.
also on your website, which I will put a link to, for everybody that can't wait for the book, just to get your toes wet. What stood out for me, because again, I was on the rabbit hole of the resource section, motion disorders, which
Yes.
I'm sorry, after 3 years of this, that's the first time I've seen that. So I kind of went, what? So
What?
motion disorders, autism, wasn't surprised about that one. Anxiety, wasn't surprised about that one. How are all 3 of these connected to oral health?
All right. So let's talk about motion disorders first. Remember how I told you I had a diagram, how the cranial nerve and how they
Mm-hmm.
all anastomose into the brainstem? The
Yes.
5th, the 7th, the 9th, the 10th, the 11th cranial nerves. So for those who don't understand, the 5th is the trigeminal nerve, which innervates the face. All right. The 7th is the 7th cranial nerve. It's called the facial nerve. It innervates the face and part of the tongue. The 9th is the glossopharyngeal, which also innervates part of the tongue. The 10th is the vagal nerve that goes all the way from here down to the intestines, and for women can affect vaginal orgasms all the way down there. And then the 11th is the spinal nerve. All right. Okay. Well, they all meet together. I have a really cool little diagram because in the book, I literally had to describe how I was trying to portray the analogies for the artist to be able to, and I had to draw them, and he had to make them to put them in digital format in the book, but it's all in there. So several stories behind tics, motion disorders. All right.
Okay.
So one of my mentors was Dr. Brendan Stagg with the American Academy of Craniofacial Pain. He was an orthodontist in Virginia outside of Washington. And he realized one day when he was putting together his slides way back when we did slides, all right,
We did slides, yeah.
For his pairs, he realized a lot of his TMJ patients, when he put an orthotic in there, remember he's an orthodontist, right?
Right.
You realize when he put an orthotic inside his patients' mouths, the tics went away.
What?
What? So what happened is that they did the research and they published it. So it's 2 of them are on my website, and Tony Sims, Dr. Sims took over the philosophy and was mentored by Dr. Stagg. So it's still out there. And Dr. Sims has amazing lectures. If you can ever see one, go hear him. So basically what happens is in this jaw joint, all right, that it also is innervated by the 5th cranial nerve, the trigeminal nerve. There's a little tendril called the auriculotemporal nerve. All right, well, think of it as when you have an electrical wire.
Okay.
All right, if you think about it, if you cut one, there's just a one little itty bitty wire. There's like 20 little different wires that create the big wire that go to the plug, right?
Right.
But one little wire carries information and data, right? You change input, you change output.
Got
That's
it.
simple. So what
Wow.
happened is they found that when they were able to change the way that the joint sat in the fossa by changing the bite, they were able to change the motion disorders that were, by the way, I'm not treating tics, I'm not treating Tourette's. I treat a TMJ disorder. All right, it's like sleep. Dentists, we can't diagnose sleep disorders, but they'll let us treat sleep disorders with appliance therapy, right? We're not physicians, we cannot diagnose these disorders. But Dr. Stagg showed that changing the bite can actually change the little ones who have tics and Tourette's.
That is mind-blowing. This is kind of when we
It's
had
in the book too, by the way.
when we had Linda Harris on the podcast, and she had TMJ and fibromyalgia and some other things and dizziness, which I guess now I'm thinking about, okay, motion disorder. I got it. I see the connection. It had something to do with her 13th tooth and her TMJ, and it was fixed, and then everything went away. So I guess I really shouldn't be that surprised, but as with most things, I would never associate the mouth.
Connecting.
No. How does it work with autism?
So now that's a multifaceted approach.
I figured that one was a pretty big one. Yeah.
Yeah, and politically, you have to be very careful what you say. That's where too I would suggest making sure, one, that you prepare your body, make sure you don't have the neurotoxins that could affect the brain. All right. Make sure too that you're eating and drinking the right way. There's certain things that kids will be more prone to. All right. Again, without being too about it, I would okay. How can I say this?
Let me just preface it with This is not a political stance. This is not a medical diagnosis. We're just sharing information.
Right, right.
Okay.
So let's just say we did a massive amount of research before we even considered not vaccinating our children.
Okay.
Both my husband and I were vaccinated. My husband at the time were vaccinated, and we did not vaccinate our children. We got religious exemptions.
Gotcha.
That's one facet of it. One facet. Another facet, there's a really good movie that's on the website that I think every parent should watch. It's called Finding Connor.
We love Finding Connor.
Okay,
and it's so funny. Okay, people don't know this. I do these podcasts just throughout the week. Did one yesterday, did one earlier today. This is my third one in 2 days. And all 3 episodes, so anyone want to keep track at home, enjoy. All 3 episodes, Finding Connor has come up. And I just got back from the SEC sleep conference in Houston, and Kevin Boyd was there, and Finding Connor came up.
Right. See how God works? Those are
I'm saying, let's go, universe. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Those are called synchronicities and synergies.
Yes.
That's where the wave and the momentum, that's not army, it's wave
is.
and momentum. That's the power and the strength, the power and unity.
And I will put a link in here for any parent that has not watched this. You need to.
It's also on my website too.
Yes.
Right. But I mean okay. So for those who haven't watched it yet, who don't know what it is, because you talked about autism and things like that, right?
Now, we've talked about autism in another episode. Yeah.
Okay, now autism is a different thing. And I think why I was in my head, I don't know why, I totally veered off to ADHD. So autism is a different thing. But ADHD, I think, would be more prone. Let's talk about ADHD now.
Let's do it. Okay.
So a lot of the kids who have, for example, disorders of attention deficit, who are non-function, who cannot correlate, who are a little bit lagging behind, and who bedwet, and who don't digest well, who are not thriving, all right, and who are lashing out. A lot of those children basically are probably not getting enough air. So they probably have sleep apnea. And so this story is about this family who did everything that they could and were ready to institutionalize their child because they were at their wits' end. They had no idea what else to do. And so eventually what occurred is they went to see Dr. Boyd, and then the guy said, I wouldn't be surprised if this child has sleep apnea. I mean, I may be paraphrasing or whatever, but all I'm saying is that, long story cut short, they did the sleep study, found out that he couldn't breathe. So of course he couldn't cope, he couldn't function. Couldn't function. And so once they addressed his airway, which nowadays there's 6,000 different ways of doing it non-surgically, and sometimes surgery may be the best bet, but figure out why the tonsils and adenoids, because they're supposed to be there to help you. But you know, sometimes life and death, pros and cons, you have to figure out what's best for you at the right time. But this child was addressed and like totally different person, like that. Makes a little longer maybe, but I mean, that was that drastic.
But still, but it was, and I will tell you, as a mom, you're going to cry. So just come with the Kleenex and you're going to do the ugly cry, because it is so moving, and it's just, it will leave you speechless. It's amazing.
Right. And it was a dentist.
That's right.
It was a dentist.
And
so that's where I'm hoping that we as a grouping could come back to the neurobiological engineers that we really are. So if you think about the cranial nerves that I told you about, do they teach you about cranial nerves in here in school? I don't know. I could tell you all my additional training, we definitely emphasize how they're connected and how they work together and how everything changes once you influence one more than the other. That I can tell you that. But that's where I think the whole trend is going to it needs to change.
It does need to change, because even it's my understanding, even in medical school, it's something like 4 or 5. I'm not saying 45 to be clear. I'm saying 4, 4, or 5, 5 hours on the airway. That's it.
So, and how many on nutrition?
That I've never asked, but I can probably guess 0, unless you took that elective. It's probably 0.
Right. And I think it's also 4 to 5 hours on sleep. I think so too. I just had a big professor say that too to me. and he wanted to go help the universities change the programs, and they said, don't need that.
That's going to be a big shift, right? That's, we were talking about this in the previous podcast. All of a sudden, there is this momentum. And maybe it's because the groups who we are, and then this is all we do all day. But, CAF, the AAPMD, Airway Health Solutions, Airway Circle, Airway Revolution, we're all together and we're all pushing in the same way. And suddenly it feels like, oh, there's some momentum. Okay, this is great. And again, this is an opinion. This is my personal, this isn't CAF's. So I'll just put that out there. But with this momentum, and you've got these mama bears pushing from one side and we're pushing from another, this is how change happens. This is how we get changes in health insurance, how we get changes in infant screening at birth, how we get changes, hopefully down the road at some point, at these universities that are training these amazing people that are out here to take care of the rest of us.
Right. So remember, the goal is to change the child, help the child grow so they don't go into, I don't want to use the word defective adults, but non-functioning adults, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so
yes.
I'm going to give you a lovely little analogy.
Okay.
Every single one of your groups is like a little light.
Okay.
A little light, each and every single one. The room that everybody was in, the whole population, all the sick people were in dark rooms. And then what's happening is each time people like you have a voice, you put another little bit of light in the dark. And then what happens is all of a sudden it's like, oh, we can see now. And we have choices. Oh, this is what's going on. Okay, now I would like to take this path because this path suits me better. Or I'd like to take that path because that path suits my family better. My family, my religious beliefs, my whatever, because you still have everybody choosing their own thing.
Right.
But I think the most important thing, and this is where we have to be careful too, ego gets in the way.
It does.
All these little groups, they want to be better than. There's no better than. We're all lights. We're all lights in the path. So we have to work together and coalesce together and connect together. I think that's really important.
I think that's hugely important.
Really important.
I think that's hugely important. And just a personal note for me, I'm watching you for people who can't see it, make this gesture, and it was very Dumbledore the way he turns on lights. And I love that. That just made my day right there. That made me so happy. Because that is what it's all about. And it's funny because we are all are, that's hard to say, separate groups. But what people don't know is how often we all talk to each other. And we're sharing information. And a dentist will come to us and, well, okay, we don't have what you need, but you know what? Go to Airway Health Solutions. They've got it. Go to the AAPMD, take this course. It's amazing to see just the synergy that is on this level. And we talk to parents all day long, and to watch them unite in these different Facebook groups and share information. It's incredibly powerful and moving. It really is. And that's what it's going to take.
Right. I'm really happy to hear that, because that's what it's all about. We're all in this together.
We absolutely are. We really are. And, kind of, I guess, to that point, and this is an opinion again.
You have a lot of opinions, Rebecca.
Right. It is opinion. Well, now it's going to be your opinion. So just hold on. So what do you think it's going to take to make this paradigm shift from dentistry that's just focused on teeth to this more holistic overall wellness, for that to come to mainstream?
I think we nailed it on the head. It's the mama bears. It's everybody, the mama and the papa bears. It's the lay person. Because remember, if the demand requires or wants it, the supply will have to change.
Will follow.
That was what my goal was all along, is to enlighten, to bring light to the situation, to realize that you can have whole health through balance. It doesn't have to be one way. It doesn't have to be surgery. You don't have to cut body parts out. You just have to know what's going on, be enlightened as to what your options are, All right. And then make your informed decision. And I
decision.
think that's the most key word here is informed decision. My way
Yeah.
is not the only way. It's just that I connected 42 plus my whole life's worth of research because I like really digging deep. All right.
Mhm.
And I did the work for practically, I mean, there's stuff in there that people are going to say, like, what are you talking about? And totally blow it off. Seriously, doctors mostly. But then there's the average person that would come in pretty aggressive. I had one this morning that was referred by a myologist that has been seeing people, some different practitioners for 30 plus years, that has all these issues, and nobody connected the dots.
Mm.
Not one. Not one. And I'm saying, okay, all right, so do I blow her away or do I just go ahead and listen to her, which I did? And do I go ahead and say, okay, you want the short story or the long story? I said, well, give it to me. And I said, well, let's start with the short story. Yes, I can do your tile releases, but you know what? You're still addressing a symptom. You're not really addressing the cause.
It's all about getting to the root, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
that's just
And
it.
so,
That's
and I told her my practice, I would treat, I'm talking to you as if I were you in the chair, how I would want to know how I would treat myself with what I see. Or
Mhm.
if you were my sister or my family, this is what I see. There's a lot more going on in here. You decide what you want to do. And it's getting to the point too now where right now I'm tired of fighting with people. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm done. It's like now that the book is here, I'm just saying, read my book. The
Mm.
reason being, it was like 40 plus years of going uphill, upstream. It's a no-brainer. The data, the research shows it all. Informed decision, you decide. But know that you have a decision and know you can live with it and know that it's going to be your quality of life. I'm just there to light the light on your path. That's all I can do. I can't do the path for you. I can't walk your path for you. I can't change your path for you. I can help you choose with light which path might work better for you, but it's still your choice. You
It's
have
still
to
your
be,
choice.
you have to take responsibility. We just did a health summit 2 weekends ago. The health summit, take responsibility or take a pill, right?
Oh,
Something to that effect. So she's,
wow.
yeah,
Such a simple phrase, but so powerful.
powerful. Yeah.
Man. Wow. So normally at this point, I ask the guests for a final word. I feel like we had it, but I'm more than willing to put it out there. If you can capsulize everything we just said.
For moms,
Mhm.
dads, that it's actually a lot better than they think it is. So we're going to end on a very positive note.
Okay.
This book is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the one that's like the Titanic breaking the waters for you all to follow through with. You walk with that book. If they don't believe you, can say, well, here's the research, or do the research. And you know, it was so funny because like 20-30 years ago, if I had people do that with me, and I'll go like, okay, you know, like, okay, I went to school, did you, kind of thing. But it's like, but that's the ego part, right? And then you have
Mhm.
the human part. It's like the mom part is like, all right, so this parent is obviously anxious. This parent obviously knows their child a heck of a lot better than I do. This parent obviously has a lot of questions that I don't know the answers for. So the ego part will say, what the heck? But then the mother and the doctor, the true doctor in me, first do no harm. The
Mhm.
true doctor in me was said, okay, I wonder why. And that's when I started researching too, to try to help connect the dots for that parent. So I think on a positive note, what we have to realize is you're your best advocate, right?
For you and
I
your
think
child,
on a
yeah.
positive note, you have to understand that the data is out there to corroborate and support what you and your gut already know as a parent.
Mhm.
Very important.
It is.
And then the third point is that listen to your intuition. God's leading you on this journey, and there's a reason for that, that we all have this journey that we're on, whatever it is, there's a reason for it. And my take out on the whole thing is that once you learn something, share it. And that's the light for everybody else, because don't hoard it. You know, there's a saying, all these sayings are in the book. You have two ways of sharing the light. You can be the light, or you could be a mirror. Reflecting the light to others. You choose. Pretty profound to end with, right?
It
You
really
choose
is. And
the
I think it would
light
be
or the
hokey,
mirror.
but it is true. I have goosebumps. So I think that's a wonderful place to end it.
The book, remember we talked about the spiritual, the emotional book?
We did.
So there are little axioms, there's little blurbs everywhere, and little curly Q flowers that through the years I picked up. You know, every graduation for a high schooler, they always say, pick the best saying that you want to live your life by. All right, well, the book has a lot of them that are in there because they're true. But one of them, I think it's Einstein, and I might be paraphrasing it, but it says, if you can't explain it simply, it's because you don't understand it. And I think that's where a lot of the poo-pooers, I'll go back to my analogy earlier on with the ego and the mom in me, to where if you don't understand it, then those who really do care about their professions, because it's a vocation, it's a true calling. A doctor,
It is.
doctor is
Absolutely.
a true calling.
I agree 100%.
You can't pay us enough to do what we do, but it's a true calling. And I think if you don't understand it, then now's the time to start deep diving and trying to. And the resources are out there. There's one of the things I want to put, and so you don't know this, but let me share this with you.
Okay.
So the website right now is what you're seeing is the site for laypersons.
Okay.
But there's going to be a whole site for doctors, to where we can train doctors somewhat in basics of Health Connections dentistry. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pair up with all the guys and gals and doctors and professors and schools and universities that I went to, and I took all these CEUs and residencies from. I want to put all those resources on there so that the doctors can know, okay, where do I go next? Which one do I do? Because that's what I did. Remember, I told you I sat down and I cried and I said, "How I want to know all this yesterday." Well,
yeah.
I was mentored by many people, but some of them said, "Okay, Claire, this is where I would start if I were you. Do this, and then do that, and then do this, and then do that." And each one, they had great stuff, but remember, they're sort of in their wheelhouse. They did their things.
Right.
What I did is I took the pearls. I took the pearls. I did the pearls, and then I strung them together in the book. I put it all together in the book. This is what I learned, so you don't have to go through all the residencies that I did. This is what I did. This is where, as a doctor, that's the next project. It's been a little bit overwhelming just getting this big but that's the next part, is actually going on to the training for the doctors and helping. Training might be a big word, but sharing with the doctors how and
I
what
like that.
Yeah, sharing.
I definitely like that. And I'll make sure there's links to everything that's available right now for parents, because I'm telling you, this resource, it's amazing. And if anyone wants to know what I'm going to be doing May 8th, because it comes out May 7th, so when Amazon delivers it May 8th, it will be me and a cup of tea and hanging out reading. So I invite every parent to be doing the same thing.
And I want you to let me know what you think, okay? Because
I will.
This is thousands and thousands of hours. And my goal, I want to make sure that I accomplish what I set out to do. So we blatantly put version 1 in there because we knew that there was probably going to be things. Remember, I wrote this starting in 2014.
2014,
Some of the data was from last century, and believe it or not, holds more true. But even then, we now have 3D stuff. We have so much more technological advancements than what we did back then.
Just 10 years ago, yeah.
And then COVID happened. All right. Well, bless COVID, because I rewrote the book during the 6 weeks.
Oh, there you go. You were productive.
I rewrote it and I reformatted it and I whittled it down. I streamlined it. So in effect, what's happening is there's so much data in there, but I had to stop somewhere. Otherwise, I'll still be writing till the next century, right?
Right.
But the goal was to make sure that we started, just like I said with the Titanic, we're starting awake. We're waking up people. We're changing the way people perceive things, perceive dentistry, perceive their health. The goal is for them to go ahead and to see that there are options, that there are different ways that they can address their issues that they may realize they have or they don't have. All right. And then afterwards determine where they want to go from there. So more than likely, somewhere along the line, we'll probably have to write another book. It won't be right now, but yeah.
Well, it's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all this and for putting together a website resource for parents that's just so substantial. Thank you.
Thank you too. I appreciate you having me. I hope that I'd some little way I was able to help a few people. And if they were, have them spread the word so they can help others who can help others who can help others. Because it's going to be the ripple effect. That's the only way that I can think of it, as a ripple.
Yep.
So my last word, and you'll like this, as a ripple.
Right.
Rumi, one of my favorite sayings is Rumi. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
I have nothing to say.
God bless you, Rebecca. Thank you so
Thank you
much for
so
everything
much.
you do.
Thank you
And
so
carry
much.
on, and I'll be happy to talk again. And I hope all the parents out there got some balm to their souls and a little balm to their seeking of knowledge, and that I was able to help them in any which way I could.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.